Welcome back to another episode of Wild and Wingless. Here tonight, episode 13, I think. I've got myself Gary Fitzpatrick. Gary, thank you very much for joining me on a nice evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be on the show.
No, I appreciate it. Once I started doing this Wild and Wingless discussion piece, Gary reached out to me and sort of let me know some of his thoughts on some of the topics we spoke about. And as soon as that happened, I just thought, man, I got to sit down and talk to you. You're a very smart man. You've been around the game for a long time. Actually, if you wouldn't mind, because I don't know a lot about you personally, and I'm sure others out there don't, could you give me a quick, brief history on your involvement, how you got to Wingless or throughout Speedway into Wingless, and where you're at now?
Yeah, sure. Dad used to race back in the '70s and '80s, and I just, I was a little kid then, and I just absolutely loved it. I was a kid hanging off the fence, watching the grader go around up at Timmer Speedway in Mildura, where we sort of lived near at the time. It's always just been a big sort of part of my life, something I've always had a lot of interest in. And then sort of once I became an adult, I started working on different cars, worked with Lloyd Hobson and his Dirt Modified. That's how I sort of got in touch with the Hobsons, did a little bit of racing myself, but really sucked, to be honest. People often ask me, why I don't race, and I say I just wouldn't be good at it. I'm just not that person. So just got involved, and then I moved over to North America in about 2008, and started working on sprint cars over there at a track called Skagit, which is sort of in Washington State. Came back here and sort of settled myself back down here, and sort of Dad and I had been talking for a while about sort of getting the racing going, and I was I was sort of managing the family business at the time, which has since been sold and all that sort of stuff, and Dad's retired, but we sort of got a Wingless going then, and that's how we sort of got into Wingless. But previous to that, we went, Dad, myself, my mum and my sister actually went on a holiday over to America, and we wanted to watch a bit of sprint car racing here and there. We sort of rented a van and did all that, and I thought, Indiana Sprint Week's on, that'll be cool. I've never seen 410 non-wing sprint car racing. That'll be awesome. So we went to a few outlaw shows and did all that stuff, and then I turned up at Indiana Sprint Week, and ever since that day, I've just loved non-wing sprint car racing. It's just the best, and particularly that Indiana Sprint Week. It's a crazy week, and it's nuts. So that sort of spurred us into wingless racing, and we've been here ever since. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, right. It's pretty funny to hear that you don't make yourself much of a driver, but you're definitely a good man on the tools and strategizing to do what you guys have achieved the last few years. So maybe you didn't get the opportunities you're given other people. Maybe we'll leave it there that you could come back and be fast. Speaking of which, the success you guys have had, LFA has had with Todd Hobson and Chris Tempe, has there been any other drivers that have been standouts? I'm just going to say they're the only ones I'm aware of, so I don't mean to be rude.
Yeah. So initially, Todd's sort of come and gone a little bit over the journey, but we won a big title 2018, I think, with Travis Miller.
Oh wow!
Driving. Okay. So that was cool. We won that at Simpson. We've had Trav drive for us. Alex Ross has driven for us. Luke Wheels driven for us.
Yep.
We got a guy by the name of Angus Hollis who's driving for us. He's did a bit of driving last season for us. We've been really lucky to have some awesome steerers. And they're all fantastic. They've all got their, what makes them special in their own different way. So I love working with them all. They're all it's all good.
Yeah, nice. The first time I ever came across you guys was at a race in Goulburn. You came up with Todd Hobson one Saturday night, and just, man, seeing that I got corrected. I thought it was the V2. I think it was the V6 you guys had that night. And just seeing him hook it in, we've spoken about on the show, hooking into turn 3 wide open, and just, wow, that's why he is who he is. He's very talented. But yeah, so you guys had success at the Australian title last season at Archerfield, and that was Well, that wasn't a very easy feat for you guys. I never knew about anything that went on. But
Yeah, yeah,
hearing the
I,
story, yeah,
yeah. Todd, it was just one of those nights. I won't explain it all again, but
yep,
obviously, damaged a flex plate and had to had to pretty much pull the motor out at about 4 o'clock on the final night to get it back in. But yeah, it was just it was a unique night in that I felt like we had really, really good car speed the night before.
yep,
And when we ran, I think fourth or third or something, fourth maybe in the prelim night. And I thought, we're okay. And Lloyd Hobson, who Todd's dad, who I have a huge amount of respect for as a racer, but he just knows how to make cars go fast. And I call it going to Lloyd Hobson University because he has a real basic understanding of car speed, and he doesn't change too much, but his cars are always bullet fast by the end of the night. And I was talking to him after the first night, and he said, "You know what? I reckon we're a gear out. I reckon if you just put a gear in that, we're good." And when I look back at the info, I could see that we were a gear. He was right. We were a gear out. So the next night we put the gear in, and it just pulled a heap better, and we were able to pick them all off. Todd sort of got through he passed about 4 of them, I think, to get to the front, and
yep.
The rest is history. He did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it did. That car did look good with the number 1 on it. So well done to you and the team. Now, there's a few things we've sort of picked up and we've discussed over the time, which hasn't been long between us. But you're very vocal in this division, which tells me that you're very passionate about it. This is one thing I took early on in the stage of us communicating, even before that. You're very passionate about what goes on, and you want to see the best for it. Now, we've spoken a little bit about wingless motors.
Yep.
In the past, and I have brought up here, and because I just don't know, so I'm just asking the question. So we've got at the moment the L27, which has been a great motor for us. But what do you think is the next logical step we should take?
It's an interesting one. We've got some real challenges in wingless at the moment, I believe. Maybe challenges that we didn't used to have. And the challenges have sort of, I believe, come to because there's so many, that the competition's becoming so strong. The cars are becoming so good. And I feel like what we're starting to deal with now is cars that are really, really hooked up as a general rule. The easiest way to unhook those cars, I believe, is to add horsepower. It's just as simple as that. What do I think should happen? I think that there's nothing wrong with the current motor, I believe, as it sits. I know people go, there's you've got the costs are going up, etc., etc. But costs are going up in everything we're doing around the world. That's just part and parcel of everything. And I appreciate some things getting harder to come by, like front covers, etc. But the truth is there's still 200 odd winglesses Australia-wide. It's a hugely successful division, and the motor runs fine. And most people get 2 years out of their motor, even if they, whether they run 10 shows or 40 shows, you can generally get a lot of shows out of them. So the current spec motor, I don't necessarily see an issue with, but there is most definitely an underlying movement, I believe, to head towards a V8. Mm-hmm. In Victoria, one of the struggles that we're really having is that a lot of tracks are finding it hard to schedule us because there's so many of us.
Yep.
And unfortunately, not having a V8 makes it a bit more difficult. Tracks are saying to my brother that, as much as we'd love to have you, we also need to put you guys with a V8 class because people want to come watch a V8. I know Sydney's you guys up in Sydney are having the same problems with promotion up there where, you've got big fields of cars and the promoters are going, that's great. We appreciate that. We love filling the back gate, but we have to refocus on filling the front gate, and we have to do certain things to fill the front gate. So we're sort of stuck in this sort of juxtaposition at the moment with the V6. if it was me, what would I do? I'd actually leave the V6 alone, keep running it as it is, and then incorporate non-wing into the LS world, so into the 360 world or whatever it may be. So you'd end up with maybe a couple of motor options, the 525, and a couple of maybe more cheaper ones that are all detuned back to 350 or 400 horsepower, whatever they may be.
Yep.
And then in that world, you might run a 360 show wingless this week and a 360 show winged next week. So you leave the V6 alone, but you sort of incorporate into the LS limited sprint car world a wingless option, I suppose. And what that would mean is that people can move through the divisions quite well. They can buy their V6 wingless on the back of the open trailer, and they can slowly step their way up with motors and trailers, etc., to find themselves at a 410 wing car at the end of the day. Every state wouldn't have to do it. So, someone like Queensland at the moment sort of struggling for numbers. So maybe they just stick with the V6 for now. Whereas down in Victoria, if we put an LS, we put a 525 non-wing show on tomorrow, 10 cars would roll into the pit. So it's every state's got their own different views on it, I suppose, or where they're at with their numbers, etc. But certainly down in Victoria, there's plenty of numbers. We've got 90, 100 odd cars. A lot of guys run the LS already winged, and I'm sure they'd be up for taking the wing off and doing some running wingless as well.
Yeah, okay. That's actually I haven't heard anyone put that idea forward. I do see that being very effective. Would you? Yeah, I mean, you've answered the question. How many people you reckon you'd get? So you'd get 10. I think that would free up our second-hand market of the V6 motors too. I think the whole idea. So a lot of people, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because this is the beauty of it. Like, so much, but one of the arguments is there's just not enough parts, not enough engines around. I hear that off people. I'm still able to find motors coming out of cars that are running. I'm not saying they're fantastic motors, so you still have to pull them down and get them everything, Mickey Mouse on them. But I'm sure there's stuff that there is something wrong. But you go and invest that money into a motor. You spend $5,000, $10,000 on a rebuild and getting everything done, Mickey Mouse. Effectively, you're talking about that's now a boat anchor. But this idea you're sort of proposing, it keeps those motors still in play for the people who don't necessarily want to go up. They just want to be budget racers in the division we have now with the formula we have, which is nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now, just a question, and educate me, because I don't know. So after the Buick L27, we had the Ecotec. Was there a reason why we never used that motor? I've mentioned it before on a podcast, and no one's corrected me, so I'm sitting there thinking, hang on, maybe either no one's listening or...
I'm not sure. I think that the truth is that the current motor's been so successful. It's been unbelievably successful. It's relatively easy to manage. The scrutineers and people who are tearing down motors, etc., they know their way around these motors. There's probably hasn't been a real need to have to go to them, maybe.
Yeah, okay. Because I started doing I looked up roughly how many L27s were produced in a car sold domestically in Australia to how many engines were produced in cars sold domestically in Australia with the Ecotecs. And it went from just under 300,000 units to over 847,000 units. And I thought, there's got to be stacks of these Ecotecs out there. I wonder what. Yeah. I know there's 20 kilowatts or something difference, but we could get that out. But anyway, that's just a question. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, that's
I think the issue is more the V8 issue rather than
the 6.
I think that's more where people want to run a V8.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think the V8 is a if we truly want to get, I'm very passionate about getting guys. 3 of our drivers have ended up racing in America non-wing, which is awesome, and I've really encouraged them to do that over the journey. So I'm really passionate about trying to get the talent pool that we have, which is ginormous, I believe. Our talent pool of wingless drivers is insanely big. There's got to be more guys who can get over there and compete really hard. But until they can learn to race with more horsepower and less grip, it's a really hard learning curve when they get there. Whereas if we had more horsepower and less grip weekly, they could get their heads around things much quicker, get over there, compete much harder, and we'd be we'd have more guys over there racing.
Yeah, no, as you say it makes a lot of sense to me. All right, we'll put the motor idea to bed for the moment. Another thing you're very big at, and I mean this in a sincere way, is the tyres. What we run at the moment here in Australia. So as you mentioned, over in America, you see a lot of what they run there. You run, running your cars behind you here in Australia. You get to see what we run with the little Buick, and I love the V6. But what's your interpretation like? What are your thoughts on the tyre situation at the moment?
Yeah, the tyres are a tough one because there's a real second-hand market in Australia for tyres for wingless guys. But I have this real dream that one day that, in Victoria, we'll roll out a 20-car field for a feature race on any given night, and every single driver will have a tyre on good enough to win. And I don't think that happens right now. I think that there's guys who are plenty talented enough to win the race, but the truth of the matter is there's guys like LFA and et cetera, who will bolt on a new tyre and will get that extra 5-10% out of that tyre to put them to the front of the bus. So I would love to see a tyre that is a lot more user-friendly, I suppose, so that guys can run them more often and get them going. So, Troy Carey, who you know very well, he races on the tyres that we've been proposing and looking at. And I'm really careful not to beat on Dumsneys or Coopers or any of those tyre manufacturers, because I really don't believe that any of them are doing anything wrong. And that there's no price gouging or anything like that. We've all heard stories of guys who have gone overseas, bought tyres back. By the time they've bought them back and they've done their numbers, it would have been just as easy to buy them off Max. So he's not price gouging. The market's the market. But what I want to see is the wingless class run on a harder tyre so that we don't have as much grip. So the racing is a lot more unpredictable. And the window of what's good and what's really good is much narrower. I think at the moment what we're finding is our cars are so under horsepowered and over tired that we're finding a lot of one lane racing going on. And there's guys like yourselves, there's a Brooms, Freddie Walsh, all these guys who are so smart with what they're doing. We've got drivers who are pretty much running features flat to the boards for 25, 30 laps. And that's because the tyres are giving them so much grip. If we take that away, the racing might be a little bit more unpredictable and safer. Because at the moment, the biggest crashes in Victoria, I believe, have happened because there's one lane, everyone's fighting for the one lane, and we're banging wheels, pushing, shoving. It's not a good spectacle on the hill. Eventually, someone catches a tyre and yard sales them. Whereas I want to see guys running the boards, one guy running the bottom, and we're all having a good time doing it that way.
Yeah, man, it's funny. We've spoken about points, but I've never heard your point of view. That's I got nothing. That's amazing. I agree with you 100%. Just a quick one. So Eastern Creek, when we got it, I think nearly straight away early on in the night they were flat to the floor, and there was never any passing. You had to pray to God the sprint cars just blew it off to the point where these boys had to get off it, and it instantly brought the racing back. But as you said, if it brought the racing back, whoever had the new tyre on at that time got that 5, 10, 15%. And I agree 100% with you. As soon as you get a track where you got to lift off that accelerator, that changes everything. I've seen guys go from qualifying flat to the pedal to the metal, and they go up front, and then as soon as they come feature time and the track's changed, they're nowhere. It's because Dad could afford an expensive motor which had the horsepower, and now it's too much.
Yeah.
Wow.
Typically the racing gets good by the end of the night, but it gets good because the grip's gone.
Yep.
That's why it gets good. So and as I said, there are wingless is chock full of people who have been around Speedway for donkey's years. They know their way around race cars. They can hook race cars up really, really well, and they do. You know, all the way from St Goldoni in Darwin, you know, all the way down to Winchurches, etc., down in Tasmania. Like, there are so many people who are really very good at it. And we're sort of a victim of our own success in many ways.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. With the, and I'm not bashing either. I'm just asking. You know, the Dumsies live around the corner from me, and they've always been very tremendously helpful to us, to me and Tyson, and I respect them. Same with Cooper. But with the new tyre that came out, the new WAV, did you guys notice a difference with that tyre?
We didn't run one. So
you didn't run one?
No, we didn't.
We ran. I think the first night we ran. Sorry, the first night we ran, it was at where we first were against you guys at Mildura.
Yeah,
and I still remember that tyre after that feature race. Yes, our leader broke off that left rear, but that tyre wasn't that bad. I don't recall. Like, I was prepared to take that to another 2 country shows, but I'm not sure where the fear came from tyres. Because did you guys have a lot of tyre wear last season in Wingless in Victoria? Was it a concern around?
It certainly is. See, what happens is that we all worry about the tyres in December and January and February when it's really hot.
Yep.
And then we sort of forget about it for March, April, May. So, you know, when it comes time to change rules and look at different options, no one's sort of bleeding from the tyres they've just burnt, because they haven't been burning tyres because of the, you know, because they haven't, you know, the conditions being much better. But, you know, in Victoria, it's dry and it's hot in the middle of summer, and a lot of these places just dust up and wear tyres. You know, it is what it is. But see, the thing that, you know, what I say to people is that, you know, it's all well and good to say, oh, I ran three shows on that one tyre, but what 3 shows were they?
Yeah.
And what sort of wear did you get out of them? And we all know that at any moment we could roll out for a heat and just burn that baby to death, you know. And it just seems unnecessary to me. Yeah,
no, that's very good point. Very good point. All right, let's change topics here. So, what are your thoughts on the formats on club racing at the moment?
Yeah, once again, it's another tough thing, and I've been pretty vocal about formats, because what we're seeing post COVID is that tracks, it's much harder for tracks to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to make money, they're filling back gates. They're putting, you know, where it used to be 80 cars in a pit, now there's 110, which is really shortening off the opportunity to get the racing done over a given night. You know, we've gone from doing about 3,000 laps on a track in a night to, you know, 4,000 or more laps on a track in a night. So, you know, the game's changed a lot. So I think if we keep our heads in the sand regarding how we think formats should run, and just keep doing it the way we've always going to do it, we're going to keep having the same problem. I'm a huge advocate, or sorry, my one pet peeve with formats is that I desperately hate when feature races get cut short. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. It just absolutely does my nut. If we turn up there advertised to do 30 laps, I want to do 30 laps.
Yep.
But often that can't happen because we've had a format where we've had a two heat format where we've run late, but we need to finish a 2 heat format to be fair to everyone. So what gets cut? The feature race at the other end.
Yep.
So I'm a real advocate to finding a 1 heat format style, which is fair on everybody, and that does include time trialing to some degree. And I know that's not everyone's favourite thing.
Yep.
But I'm going to refer to America here. In America, they do hot laps and time trials all into one. So it's, if you go to a local show in, say, Kokomo on a Saturday night, you'll just roll out. You'll do 3 laps. They call it hot laps, time trials. They do everyone on the track at once, all 10 cars on the track at once. It's over within a jiffy. Everyone's timed their way in, and that leads into the heats, and you race your way in through the heats, and away you go. So, you know, I'm really keen to sort of see that can sort of shorten the nights out. And what it also does, as I said before, is it stops that idea of we've got to finish the 2 heats and now we're really late. So your feature race is now 10 laps. I'm like, oh man, like it's just not fun.
That's When we had an unfortunate incident where one of our race country series at Canberra, the race was cut short, and I kind of wish that they didn't tell the drivers, and I'll probably get shunned for this, but telling the drivers you're cutting it is one thing, but telling them it's going to go from like 25 or 20 laps down to like 15, that's another. But then they went and told them, oh, it's cut down to like 10 laps, and I thought, I wouldn't have said that, because it instantly hit the panic button on many people. And a very good friend of ours was involved in a pretty bad accident there. But I'm not saying that was due to it, but if you think you've got 15 laps, you go, all right, I'm just going to pace myself a little bit. That's really good points that you raised about running the time trials single heat format, because I've always been very strong on the 2 heats. We came from tar racing where you did qualifying, you did all that sort of stuff. And qualifying or time trials, hot laps, that's like my pet. I hate it. I hate running the clock. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think you raised some very good points, and I do like it when people, besides just having their own opinion, and if you say no, I don't agree with you, they just yell at you. You've actually raised some pretty good points there. And I'm thinking, well, if you're good enough to go from back to front, like from the rear to the front in a heat, and then you do a reverse heat, and you can sort of do something cool there as well. Well, you're good enough to set a lap time, I'm guessing. So. Really, what are we changing? Now, you did say something very important there too, shortening our race meets. That would have to be, I think, an underlying problem we have. As much as it's great to say, hey, come down and watch Speedway tonight at your local track, get in for $30, gates open at 4 or 5 for the general public, and we go until nearly 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock. Time-wise, $30, that's value for money. But is that too much? Is that too long? Go to a football game, like, you know what I mean? Like a football game, you're talking 2 hours, sort of, you're around the football game. Like, you go watch, I don't want to talk tar racing, but go watch VS Supercars, right? They got their racing on during the day, you're there, but man, you go off and get sidetracked by the sideshows and all the other stuff they've got there. Like, is racing, and I think you sort of nailed it, perhaps it's too long of a night. I spoke to Troy Carey and Todd Hobson, sort of told me, because I said, like, how long does it go over there? And they're like, oh, dude, we'll get through like 40 cars in like 4 hours. Like, whoa. Really? And they're like, oh, yeah, that includes wrecks. That includes everything. And I was told, like, your strict schedule over there is like, when they call you, you're going. If not, don't even think about, crying or anything, because no one's there to hear you. You're a big boy now. You put the big boy pants on. All right, you've definitely, I'm very interested in that. Now, I guess my next question to you would be, Gary, is what would you change on the Australian? So that's your normal club show night. What would you do about Australian title night? Would you change, or not would you change it, but what's your thoughts on that format? Sorry.
Yeah, so the Australian title format, people are going to say, oh, Gary, what happened to you guys? You're just, bad luck for you guys. I get it. But I, to be honest, I have staunchly disagreed with the Australian title format for years. And the reason I have, Travis Miller had the same problem last year. We suffered the same issue this year. But there's really no opportunity for cars to race their way back in if they have something go wrong on the first night. And that's a really, people go, okay, that's fine, Gary, but, whatever. But once again, in America, it's all racing. It's not points racing. So if you can recover yourself well enough by passing a lot of cars, you can get yourself back in the mix. And if you look at Knoxville have the Hard Knocks night. That's what the Hard Knocks night's there for. It's there to give guys an opportunity to race, have another go at racing their way back in and proving themselves back at the top. What would I change? If it was me, I'd go to a 2-heat format on the first night.
Yep. Right.
And then have even features across the board for everybody on the first night as instead of a 3rd heat. So if there's 100 cars in the pit, you'd have 5 A mains pretty much that are all evenly spread. So everyone gets an A main. And what it means is if someone's had a crash in the 1st heat or the 2nd heat or whatever, and they're at the back of one of those A mains, if they're good enough and they can pass everyone in one of those A mains on the first night, they give themselves another opportunity on the second night.
Yep.
And that, I feel like that would be it would put on way better racing, as in those A mains on the first night would be unbelievably good because everyone's vying for those spots. And you'd see guys who maybe have had a DNF, maybe they got crashed out, whatever. To say, okay, well, I'm starting down the back of this one, but I can get up on the wheel and I can get around everyone. And Mildura's a place that you can do that.
Yep.
I think that would be good because that last year, that 20 car final on the first night worked really well for us. Mm-hmm. This year it didn't. It just buried us. So if you don't make that 20 car field on the first night, it's really very hard to recover to any great degree. So I think I think those 20 car fields initially were done back in the day, or that format was sort of developed back in the day when there was probably only 5, maybe 10 cars who could have won it. Mm-hmm. So all those cars make that 10 car field. They put on a little show at the end of the night. Everyone goes home and goes, great, these cars made the show. In Wingless now, it's different. There's 30 cars who can make the show. Yeah. And you've got to give everyone a good opportunity to race their way into a spot, I believe. Just my thought.
Okay, so that's your first night. Are you happy with how the second night would run, or what's your ideas for the second night?
Well, the first night, if it was once again, I probably thought about this too much, but on the first night, you might do a system where you might say, okay, whoever the first 2 of every one of those A mains. Yep. So whoever finished first, so there's 10 cars. You remove those 10 cars out of the field. They're now in a dash or something else like that. Yep. Right. They've qualified their way in. They've raced their way in, not just points race their way in. They've raced their way in, which I love. They've raced their way into the final. On the second night, you might do an invert, similar to what we've done, what we always do, and you might grab a couple more from points on the second night and put them in with the dash with these other cars on the second night, something like that. Okay. But giving guys that opportunity first night to race in, and then adding some more the next night, I think would be an awesome event.
Right. Okay. I'm open to both your standard show ideas and as well as Australian title. I guess how's what's the chances of, say, getting a blue ribbon event or an event down in Victoria where you guys could? I don't know what your next step is, but sort of showcase this idea. I think sometimes we get these ideas and we put them across to the correct avenues of our committees for our division, and I'm not putting anyone down in our AWSR committee or any of the states committees, but sometimes and I'm like this way, I'm sometimes set in my way with how I put on my ice skates or something like that before I play a game. But you just can't get over a line with some people. So what would there be an opportunity, I guess, for you to be able to go, right, let's perhaps try this, get some engagement in some people and try one of these format nights. Put on some sort of event, call it something, and bring some love to it. Would that be an idea that you could do, or is that simply my just talking out of tone here?
To be honest, Warrnambool 3 years ago pretty much ran that format
for Wingless.
For Wingless,
They
only had 2 finals. They only took the top 40, so they ran 2 separate features. Yep. But they pretty much ran the same format, and they went Millsy at the time, I think, realised that there's no use having the 20 cars. Let's make it 40 because there's a lot of cars here that can possibly win. Let's get all those cars into an A main or a feature on the first night. So, right. It's a it is what it is. But yeah, I'm sure there's opportunities to do it. You just got to convince people to give it a go. And as I always say to people, I'm happy to be wrong. I'm very happy to be wrong as long as it gives things a go.
Yeah, no, I'm actually excited to try one of those events. So, yeah, I'm down with that one. All right. Another thing I want to talk to you about then, I guess, this is pretty good. We're getting some good conversation here. I hope everyone else is enjoying it. You've got your series. Well, everyone's got their club championships. Every state's got them, and I'm not knocking them because I still believe they are the foundation of our racing divisions per state.
Yep.
When you start racing in this division, you will be racing in the club championship. No probs. And you look at the club championships, and I mean, I don't know Victoria, but I could guess. I've seen New South Wales, the names that are on there that have been previous winners and stuff like that, they've gone on to, to other things. But one thing is they're a respected and recognised driver, which is fantastic. Now, we've got the club championships, but I'm starting to hear more about series. So, for example, you guys have got that very successful series down in Victoria, SummerSlam. Do you guys, what do you think about championships to series? Are you
Yeah,
do you
I
chase
think,
club championships? I don't think you do you?
we don't. I've got 2 children and business, etc., etc. It's really hard to turn up to enough shows to realistically compete at that level. I think that I think that the little series like the SummerSlams work really well.
Yep.
I love multi-day racing over a weekend.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that people can get some time off work, forget about work. Let's go and race Friday night, Saturday night, even a Sunday night if there's whatever it may be, and get back to work. I love that happens. And once again, in America that happens a lot. That's what a lot of them. That's how they pack their racing in. I think those little series are really good. It gives you something to focus on. Everyone's different with their life, where they are in their life, whether they got, as I said, businesses, they've got families, they've got a whole heap of other things going on. Giving people opportunities to sort of race at their own way, I think is a really good thing, rather than a club aggregate points, which is fine, but it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, right. No, that's an interesting point, because, as I said, it's club championships work well, but you're right. Sometimes they take over too much, and before you know it, we're spending too many time, and you lose family and the rest. Okay, so we're talking about the series versus club championships.
Yeah.
So we spoke about the SummerSlam, and that's getting very popular. Speaking from an outsider, not a Victorian, not a Mexican, what and you've touched on it before. When it got locked down to 60 cars or something like that, was that simply because the pit areas weren't large enough for that? Was the reason? I can't remember what the reason was. You guys.
Yeah, it was a sad time, really, because I was actually on the committee at the time, and the challenge that we had was that the tracks didn't realise, I think, how many cars had nominated for the event. So when they sat down and did their sort of final counts, etc., they realised they weren't going to fit everyone in the event. So someone had to miss out.
Yep.
We'd just come off the back of COVID. A lot of our guys had barely raced at all. And it just seemed like the logical thing to sort of allow our guys, we've been in the most lockdown state on the planet pretty much, to sort of give our guys a chance to do some racing, because there were some guys who'd nominated for one night, there's some people who nominated for 2 nights, and people say, oh yeah, but they should have nominated for all 3. Everyone's different, everyone's got their own thing going on. As it turned out, it ended up a really good series, but it was just an unfortunate situation, something that the club just didn't foresee coming until Tuesday night, before the Friday night of the racing. Just a sad situation.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, we heard nothing but rumours. That's everything. Motor racing, everything in life's rumours. One thing I thought it was going to do was almost make that the event the following year be just packed. What I mean? It's one of those things. If you tell someone you can't do something, they want to go do it. And it was like SummerSlam was called off, or when I say called off, we couldn't enter it. I started sitting there thinking, hang on, next year, let's what are we doing? What are we doing? So for me, it started putting it on the list. I had a lot of friends go down from New South Wales, and they came back going, dude, man, we had a ball. They'd never been to half the tracks, and just the way they were. And it's not just Victoria. Every club we've gone to in other states have been very welcoming. But it's just get the deal. So I thought that was good. Sad that you guys locked it down, but I think it probably made the event be everyone wants to do it now. So probably a good thing. Another series we've got kicking off this year is the WOW series, Wide Open Wingless series. You're obviously familiar with it, and would I go as far as to say you've got a driver in it?
Yeah, Chris Temby's going to hop back in it. We
Yep.
we sort of had plans to do it with Todd, but Todd's just it's hard to sort of. Todd doesn't know where he's going to be in 6 months, let alone anything else like that. And as I said to Todd, I don't want to stuff anyone around with it. They're trying to make this a good thing. He can still turn up and race if he wants. And we sort of had the discussion with Kiko or Chris that he can drive for us. He was going to do it himself anyway, so it was a sort of a perfect match, really.
Yep.
Chris has actually driven the car the car that Todd drove to the Australian title and all the way through last year. Chris has driven that for us before up in Darwin, and had a really successful run in it up there. Like, sort of, he really did very well. So I'm hoping we can sort of find that sort of speed again when we get going again at WOW. But we'll see. It's going to be pretty tough.
I'm sure when you put the LFA team and Chris Temby together, you will get some success. It's just one of those calculations that comes up good. I mean, it was good to see, because every night I hope I'm not the only one who sit by the Facebook to see who's going to be announced. And it's, I mean, at the end of the day, I said it the other night on an episode, it's like, I don't think I didn't comprehend how far this WOW series was going to go. You've got 20 of East Coast Australia's best. I can't say Australia's best because I upset people in Northern Territory. I think we've got, Daniel Godini's. But I'm not sure if we've got WA guys going, and don't mean to disrespect, but you got 20 of the best, right, that have been at the Australian titles at Lismore, Archerfield, like at Murray Bridge there, even though it got cancelled. Like, you've got 20 of the best. That means for 5 nights this season, you're virtually going to have an Australian title. Like, you are talking the best of the best. So to see Chris Temby, to me, that was just a given. Like, the kid's very talented, very talented. I had a good little chat with him at Lismore there, and I thought, I was there joking with Todd, and he sort of walked over, and I thought he was a very nice kid, and I could see after driving or watching him drive why you guys use him. But so you got 5 nights of racing. It's going to be so hard. What do you guys also? Because I mean, you guys are sort of a part-time team. Are you guys going to look at doing like your Victorian state titles, South Australian state titles, New South Wales?
We'll see how we go. It'll just depend. We sort of take it week by week. My wife's a very busy human, generally speaking, so she's far busier than me, which means that I'm often left with the children over weekends, etc. So, we'll just sort of take it as we come. Whether or not we do SummerSlam, I'm not sure. Brother Sean, who's the president of the Victorian club, he's got a lot of responsibility over that week. I might not be able to get to all the races, so we've got to make a decision on whether we think that's something worth pursuing. If I can't get to everything, we'll just sort of take it as we see it. But we'll definitely be at Mildura. We'll definitely we'll be at all the WOW stuff, and we'll just see what else other than that. Yeah,
right. What about that Ty Bill series? Like, it's looking to go the what was it, Murray Bridge, Borderline, and the new track, was it?
Tomla.
Yeah.
At Bordertown. Yep.
Well, Bordertown, sorry. That's got me interested, just going to that new track. I'd really love to go to that track. Have you been near that track, seen that track, know anything about that track?
I drove past it about 2 years ago and popped in my head in and had a look.
Yep.
It was still pretty basic back then, but you could see that it was going to be good. It's going to be an unbelievable place. It's going to be so good.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
It's not that big. A lot of people think, it's going to be huge. But the truth is that most they've obviously taken it from an American track, Peverley, but most American tracks are no bigger than what we run anyway. So,
really?
And this is no different. They're not much bigger. Some of the, like, if you go to Pennsylvania or sort of through Iowa, Knoxville, and those sort of tracks, they're bigger. They're half miles, but majority of the weekly racing in America is done on tracks just like ours. They're quarter miles. They're just the same. If you go, every track in Indiana is pretty much a quarter mile, except for Terre Haute, which is a half mile. If you go in Ohio, every track's pretty much a quarter mile. Maybe Atomic's a bit bigger, and then you've got Eldora, which is bigger. But the other 30 tracks are just quarter miles, just like ours. So
Yeah, okay.
yeah, they're no different, no different.
All right, I want to hit another topic that's recently sprung up in
Yeah,
Wingless anyway, is
yep,
a need for quad bikes in the pits.
yep,
So for those that don't know, and I don't want to go into he said, she said stuff, but Toowoomba have come out,
yep,
High Tech Oil Speedway have come out saying that Wingless will be required to be pushed around the pits. You can either
yep.
get your crew to do it, or you can get a quad bike. What are your thoughts on this, and what do you see happening with this?
Uh, I hope that the quad bike issue has something to do with allowing families into the pit area. That's what I hope. Whether that is where they're headed with all this stuff, I'm not sure, but I do have my fingers crossed. I'm a staunch advocate for families in the pit. And if quad bikes are what's going to help that happen, then I'm all for it. I appreciate I'm not going to be the most popular person in the world for saying that quad bikes are okay. We've got a trailer that fits a quad bike. I know there's plenty of people who say they haven't got a trailer that fits a quad bike. But once again, I'll refer to America. Most guys don't push their sprint cars around in America with their mules. They push them around with 90 horsepower little Yamahas.
Yep.
A funny story, we pulled up to race at a track in Indiana one day, and as we were driving into the car park, from out the side of the trailer next to us, the driver, Chase Stockton, had thrown his little 90cc quad bike straight out right in front of us. So they get treated like dirt. They get used up, but they do the trick. They're tiny. They're only this big. They push the cars around just fine. Yep. And you can put it in the back of your trailer. You can put it in the back of your ute. It is what it is. But I am an advocate for families. I think that Australian Speedway is at a real junction now with we're seeing crowds lacking. We're seeing nights go on really, really late. We're seeing, the days get bigger, the expense get bigger, all that sort of stuff. But we do need to start allowing families to access motorhomes, access, beds, et cetera, during the night. I use the analogy as if your wife was playing netball on a Saturday night and you all drove up to the court in the back of a motorhome and parked next to the court, and your wife said, "Righto, I'm going to start playing sometime, about 6 o'clock, and I could be finished about midnight." Right, but what you have to do is you have to go and sit over near that tree 100 meters away, and you can't come back to the motorhome until I'm finished. And you got to feed the kids, bath the kids, get them to sleep, keep them warm, do all that sort of stuff. Right? You'd be like, forget it. Just leave me home. I'll put the kids in front of the television, and that's what I'll do. And that's effectively what we're doing to our families at the moment. It's terrible. So we need to be a bit more understanding of the fact that why people don't want to come and watch us race, and that includes family and friends. But if it's easy for a family to walk back into the pit, put the kids, you guys have got a motorhome that you could have family in if they needed to. We don't, but we would set it up if we could, where kids can come and sleep. You can put a meal on for them. You can put the tally on for them. You can do all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, that just opens the world up to so much more for all of us. More people in the gate, more help at the tracks, more engagement with your kids around cars, all that sort of stuff. And there's people say, "Oh yeah, but it's dangerous." Well, there's other ways of doing it that's not dangerous, I believe. You don't have to, and if quad bikes is a part of making sure it's not dangerous, well, then I am all for it.
Yeah, no, we've got one. I went out and just bought one because I was sick to death of pushing that car around by myself. I didn't. When we got the wingless, we got told off someone. I wish I knew who they were. They said, "Be careful starting this thing all the time. Flex brakes, the flex brakes break." And I thought, "Oh, okay." And then push him around physically, and so I went and bought one, and then later got it home, and the wife said, "Oh, are you sure that will fit?" And I was like, "I haven't checked." And luckily enough, I moved the front toolbox forward to 120 mils, and we put the quad bike on sideways. it looks terrible going down the highway. Yes, I've been pulled over because the police are like, dude, what is this contraption you got on the back? It looks terrible, but I got like 14 ratchet straps on there. If the heavens open up and we're packing up to go home, it's the worst thing in the world. You just to try and put all them straps on in the rain. But hey, it happened. I would have gotten a 90, except for I'm so big I look like Donkey Kong on the thing in Mario Kart. But one thing from me coming from, we weren't a part of Speedway when we came in with Tyson. We raced at Parramatta. Parramatta was pretty cool. If anything, we were so sport with Parramatta. People of New South Wales, Sydney, like we were so sport. We didn't know what we had until it was gone. But we could go in there and your partner come in with the children and everyone's in there until they close the pit gates. And that was good because the kids could stay under the quick shade tent for a little couple more hours or in the car with the aircon running for a couple more hours before they had to get out. And by that stage, the sun was sort of going. Well, we went away to a country track. Again, we've never been there before, didn't know anything. And they turned around and gone, yeah, no, you guys can go in here, but you two little girls and your partner, well, they're going to go over there. And there was no bleachers, there was no grandstands because people were parking with their cars to watch the racing. So at the time, wasn't thinking. I dropped them off. I went in. Then I went looking for them. I found them I can't remember how it was, but they were sort of all crowded up underneath someone's rear boot lid of a station wagon for shelter because it was so hot. And I said, no, I got nothing. I thought, this is wrong, man. Like, we had no idea. She wasn't calling me up to give me hell because I was trying to work on a car, but I ended up unhooking the trailer and giving her the car. Now, you could just imagine some people would have a partner, and rightly so, who would not stand for that. And you've just instantly put a void or created a drama within your, you're trying to get your son racing, trying to get the family happy. Bang, we're not doing this no more. I would love to see kids back in the pits. I think if you've got the area, or what do we work under? You're not allowed to go in anyone's pit area, right? So your, imaginary line pit area, that's your domain, that's your house, that's your residence. I believe kids should be in that pit area, like in that rectangle section, because no cars are coming in there. We all got fire extinguishers by the rules. It should be a very safe place for children to be. So I agree with you there, Gary. I definitely think it's something we're missing. I think for us to move forward as a whole, it used to happen, and now we've lost that. And as you said, like you just said before, your partner's very busy. She works a lot and all the rest. You got to have the kids. How much easier would it be if you could have your kids with you while you're doing this? So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's
and you might have my theory on it. At Eldora.
Yep.
Kids are allowed in the pit everywhere in America. That's a normal thing. Kids in the pit. There's no argument. They're just everywhere.
No, right? Sorry. Before you go, just to make sure, when you refer to kids, you're talking like infants, yeah?
Doesn't matter how old they are.
Okay.
Yeah, anyone's allowed in.
Yep. Everyone's
allowed in. But at Eldora, what they do is they put kids in high-vis vests with a number on the back, and they can refer that. They link the kid with the number on the back to whoever it is. So if kids are misbehaving, getting in the way, etc., they know where to come down on who to come down on. But I can't see why they couldn't do something like within the pit area confines, maybe have a separate pit area within the pit area that's fenced off, where that's a family-friendly area where no cars ever drive through that area. Push like a quad bike, like one of the track quad bikes pushes all cars through there. I don't care if it's a street stock or a sprint car or anything. No cars push there. No cars that are sit on jacks. You got to be put on jack stands, so that you can do a whole heap of different things that that would make that space a really safe space. But ultimately, what my partner would love to do if she wanted to come racing is put the kids to bed, hop in bed herself, read a book, and she's happy.
Yep.
Sitting in the middle, waiting for me to finish, for us to finish our racing at 12 o'clock. She's just uninterested. It's just there's
too much.
Not something.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, and I think the way you raise it. So we've heard people say instantly as soon as they hear this new rule, and I've been the same with rules. You say a new rule, and I've got it on my car, I get upset. But the quads aren't big. I often, offer out my quad bike. I won't ride the thing. I'm terrible on that quad bike. It's dangerous me driving that. So anyone else is more than happy to operate that quad bike and get themselves out of trouble. I think it's something we need to do. kids in pits is the future. It is 100% the future. It's something we need to do.
Yeah.
One more question before I let you go, and I appreciate your time. I think I might try and make this a weekly or fortnightly thing with you because there's a lot more questions I can come up with now, I think, and I've enjoyed this. What would you have to say is your favourite track?
My favourite track.
Sorry, I'm going to say Australia, and then by all means America. But
okay. Yeah. My favourite track in Australia is probably Mildura.
Really?
Yeah. I think Mildura is an awesome joint. There in Simpson. Simpson's a really good example of. Simpson was a track 10 years ago that you loathed to go to, right? That committee and the people who run that track made that into the most badass joint,
really?
In Australia. It is so good. It's racy. It's good. They lifted the fence up. They flattened the bottom out. So they flattened the bottom of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 out, so that the cars you had to really tiptoe around the bottom rather than full noise around the bottom. At one point at Simpson, they were flying super rods out of there in the ambulance, like just about every show. It was out of control, but they shaped the track so beautifully now, just like Mildura, that the racing is just badass. And when you guys come down and race, I hope you'll see what I mean. It's an unusual place, but once you get a head around it, it's just the best. It went from not a sprint car track to one of the best sprint car tracks, I believe.
Really? Okay. Your comments about Mildura, and I said last question, but hang on, what's your favourite American track?
My favourite American track? We call this place here, where we are at the moment, we call it Kokomo. We spend a lot of time in Kokomo. They're racing, the USAC are racing in Kokomo at the moment. Todd's racing there at the moment. Kokomo is the most perfect racetrack I've ever been to. I feel like I've been to many around the world, and many of the very best ones, right? Kokomo is unbelievable. To run the top at Kokomo in a 410 sprint car, you need every bit of horsepower you've got. To run the bottom at Kokomo, you need to be dancing with your feet. Like, it is just, it's a totally different ball game, right? It's nuts. It's big. It's no bigger than Avalon, but it's wide and it's open and it's full noise, and the racing's badass. Whenever the like, what were the All Stars went there and they had a wing show there, they were always really, really good. Kokomo for me is the one. There's another track which I love. It's called Terre Haute. Yes. People probably laugh at me. That Terre Haute's like an old fairground, right? Yep. It's a big half mile and it's flat. It's proper flat. It's got a little bit of banking maybe at best, but it's just, like an old, horse track pretty much. And the cars are nuts. They come, the 410 wingless cars, when they come around the top corner, they've got no grip because it's a really loose surface. But as they come down the back straight, the cars sort of wiggle their way into this straight line and then just like absolutely hammer down the back straight. It takes your breath away. It's that unbelievable. It's so good.
Oh, I lost you there. There we go. Yeah, right. Okay, so two tracks. What I was going to say about Mildura with the Australian title coming up. We saw, and I've banged on forever and a day with what happened at Lismore because it took my breath away. I just couldn't believe. I felt it put Wingless where it should be. I don't know if it could have been publicised anymore because it was pushed, but man, like that. Excellent coverage from Clayview and all the rest, and the promoters, Mick and Kim, did a great job. But like when I tell people about it, they're like, "Oh yeah, I sort of saw it." Oh, what was with that flames and stuff? And you think, dude, man, you just have no idea. It was incredible. Do you think Mildura will get the same sort of element, same sort of excitement out of there? I asked this to everybody, so what do you think?
Look, Lismore was a pretty special place for speedway racing in general. But not to say Mildura's not. Mildura's, Dad was brought up racing motorbikes in Mildura for years and years. And
was that at the old Olympic? Is it Olympic?
Olympic Park, yeah.
Olympic Park?
Yeah.
Okay,
He was one of those nut jobs.
Yeah, right. Nut jobs.
Mildura's a special place as well. I don't know. The good thing about Lismore is that it had so many. It's got such a culture of wingless racing at Lismore. Mildura's got that, but it doesn't quite have the depth. I think the fact that Jacob was a favourite
local boy,
win it, and that he was a local, and he's a very popular guy. That also, I reckon, really carried that event. Like it's to extraordinary levels. But it was fantastic. I thought the racing was pretty good. They've obviously got their troubles, their struggles with the track a little bit.
Yeah,
I'd like some of those crashes made me feel a bit. To be honest, I felt like some of them were a bit. It was a bit one laney and a bit tough to pass, etc., etc. But generally speaking, it's an awesome event, and they do a magic job. They can come and do any tracks down here whenever they feel like. There's no.
Oh yeah, just I often think about that. Just imagine if they had some of those tracks that are just set in their ways. You just think, wow, it would change everything. I'm hoping Mildura. It's got a great town, great small town sort of atmosphere, but a large town sort of vibe as well. It's got enough to cater for all of us wingless drivers and teams. But I'm really hoping the town gets behind it. Being Wade Orange's backyard, I'm hoping he gets in there and promotes it and talks about it and gets it happening. I still watch that video, and I feel not going into what happened between Todd that night and I think it was Travis Miller. But if that didn't happen, I just think, man, it would have been a show for sure. That South Australian state title. That track was just, you could run bottom, mid, high, whatever you wanted to do. It had the grip everywhere. Everyone was running, and it was great to see. And I really hope, we get that same thing. Best thing about Mildura too is I love is the pit layout is very easy to understand. You got a lot of room. That's a pretty cool pit layout as well. But, all right. Oh, actually, say
go for it.
No, you.
I was going to say that the beauty of Mildura that when they improved, like I've been going to Mildura since I was literally less than 1 year old, but the beauty of Mildura, what they've done so well, where Waters often talks about this, is he says that they've reshaped the track. Yes. So not as in relaid it out. I mean, like it's got a genuine. It's very American in its style of how it's shaped. So it's got a very flat, very flat bottom line. So, and it's not just one car width. It's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 car widths wide, and it's really flat. And then it steeples towards a wall. So to be good on the bottom, you've got to stick the bottom. You can't just run flat out through the bottom.
Yep.
Right. But to run the top, you've got to be prepared to get up there and wheel it. So that's what separates the best tracks, I believe, from the ordinary tracks. It's actually not how banked it is or fast it is or whatever. It's actually how flat the pole line is. If the pole line's really flat, it keeps guys off the pole line, and they've got to go find grip elsewhere, and that's what makes Mildura such a beautiful track.
Like we were there once upon a time. Tyson was there, and it was around the Easter when they had the 360s. I think were there on the Friday night. We raced on the Sunday night, and I could not believe. First of all, that track went black on the All Stars, and they were just popping tires like crazy. And I thought, man, we're done here. Like I should have brought all my old tires just to wear up and abuse it. But they turned that track around for us, and all those wingless were up against the fence. And like Tyson had been a while since he'd been up, sort of running a fence like that he misjudged and made an idiot of himself. But that's how we thought it was going to go the next time we went there. We went there the next time, and it was like a club show. A few of us from Sydney came down, and a few guys from South Australia. Yeah, completely different track. And then we went to the South Australian title, completely different track again. But in every single saying that, like all of them were good tracks. So I'm really got a lot of hope for this. Got a lot of hope for the WoW series going there. I think the tracks the WoW series are doing are great as well. No, there's one more thing I want to talk to you about. You pulled me up on. Sorry?
I said hit me. Yep. No worries.
The side visors. The side visors. So what I'm referring to is side visors. I'm talking about the ones that come down the top of the cage, just sort of blocking out. Well, USAC guys wear them and all the rest. Speed cars wear them. We've got a rule where they want, I can't remember if it's 250 mil or whatever it is. We've been using them for 2 or 3 seasons. But me and Mark mentioned about them. What was your take on the side visors? What do you think about them?
Yeah, we had to take ours off with the Australian title because they were upset about them. look, my view, it's really the first problem is that when we put a rule to the Sprint Car Control Council, that rule sits within the sprint car section.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not a wingless rule. Now, every year, the Sprint Car Control Council can only change a certain amount of rules per year. I think it's about half a dozen.
Yep.
So if that's not seen as a priority, the visor, then they just throw it out pretty much. So we're sort of at their beck and call a little bit. But I'm a big fan of the visors. I think they're a lot safer, et cetera, et cetera. If it was me, it would just be the expectation is you need to be able to get out two ways in your car. You know, whether that's through the roof, that way or that way, I don't care. But you need to be able to get out of the car from belted in a certain amount of time. And if you can do that, then I'm okay with it. It needs to be 2 exit points.
Yep. And
for most people, that would mean that the right-hand side is null and void. But I think the frustration for everyone is that it's obviously no one ever exits out of that side ever.
No.
The only thing I can see as a problem is it gives, if someone's hurt their neck, and a crash crew member can't get around to hold their head properly, maybe that's a problem. But I can't really see how that can't be done through the top. Yeah, I just haven't got a problem with them. Interestingly, I saw one at the racing the winged race today in California, where at the back of the chassis it was really thin, but by the time it got to the upright at the front, it had actually sort of opened right out. So it's sort of gone. So the guy could clearly get himself out easily, and it wasn't getting his. But by the time it got to the front, where you obviously could see, it was actually spread right. I thought, oh, that's not a bad little idea if we can't sort of change the rules. But yeah, I can't see a problem with them at all.
Yeah, my whole thing behind it was because a lot of people say I was going for looks. I don't know if you guys have seen my race car. It's a very plain white, boring car. I wasn't going for looks. Yeah. It was more so I was getting sick to death of. I'm pretty pedantic when it comes to helmets and safety. I had a few big hard knocks when I was a kid, and I'd like to pretend my helmets worked because my parents were fanatical about it. But just the amount of like damage Tyson's had in his helmets running tracks. So I tried to see what can you do to limit that, and I was going to look at one of those nettings, and some people actually thought that'd be cool to see again. With those the triangle netting side things. I know it's not for that purpose, but people were like, "Oh, that'd be cool again." But then I went to those sun visors, and I was surprised how quickly it limited the amount of debris hitting his head. It dropped down a lot of that, took out the sun out of his eyes, and he said, "Oh, now I'm looking in, I can see this corner." Whereas before, he's sort of driving on sort of feel, and it dropped down our tear-off weight as well. But to me, once I started seeing, I'm no longer giving him 2 helmets a season, and I believe every driver is entitled to paint their helmet design whatever they want. The helmets are made these days to be painted, so don't try and argue that with me. But by the time you get them done and get them painted, I'm spending a fortune on this stuff, and I'm thinking if tracks are able to get SA approved licensing to run, but they're not screening their tracks. I've lost Gary again. Yeah. But not screening the tracks, then it just sort of creates a lot of problems for our helmets and our head wearers. So I was sort of on that side of the coin. And when I explained that to our national tech guy, he sort of went, "Oh, hang on. Well, I didn't think of it like that. I thought you were doing it." And I said, "Mate, no. We proved Tyson can get in and out of both sides, and he let us race. And it was just interesting that we raced Queensland like that, went to South Australia, no problem. Then we went to New South Wales, and we had some bloke from Victoria sort of saying, well, the rules are rules. And I'm saying, yeah, but he can get out, and if time him, he'll be out within 5 seconds with a helmet on and harness and everything. He can get out. But I understand rules are rules, so okay, fine, we'll swap over to tape. So we taped it up instead. And then when we went to what I couldn't understand was we got asked to remove one side at one race meeting. We went to another race meeting, and another bloke from Victoria, no, not knocking you Victorians, but he turned around and said, I've got to remove the other side. I'm thinking, at least get consistency here. You know what I mean? And I already had the national tech guy turn around and say, oh, we've dealt with this matter. I'm happy with that. It was almost like the old, do you remember the board that came in for a bit there behind the seat? And I saw that and I thought, gee whiz, I want that because Tyson at the time was weighing 60 odd kilos, wet, like not much to him. We just put our weight up to 1450. I got no titanium on that car at all, like none. And so I'm filling up I go from a 28 gallon tank to a 33 gallon tank, filling that thing up for us to race. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what have I got? 4, 5/16 screws, bolts holding this tank in.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the board would protect him from a fire, but if it splashed out, it may spread the spray so he's not just dumped, And that's what I was. Anyway, they didn't like it. They got rid of it. And at the time, thank you very much, Gary, for explaining. Us or uneducated people like me, we don't understand why the process is a bit difficult. But now we see it. We have to go through the sprint cars. They can only make a couple of changes every year, so that's what it is. But
can I just plug my phone in quickly?
Yeah, by all means.
To run out.
No, there you go. We're watching Gary plug his phone in and run. But geez, I tell you what, I don't know who else has got a nice workshop like that sitting behind him. But yeah,
really quick. Sorry.
No, I appreciate this. I had a set of questions I was going to ask you, and I've just well and truly gone beyond that, and I'm sort of adding to my questions that I wanted to ask. But I think I might have to make it a regular thing.
Add away. Yeah. Well,
all right.
Always happy to give too many opinions. There's no doubt about that.
No, you're pretty good. You're pretty good. And I made a mistake at the start. I think I said it was episode 12. It's episode 13. So I can't even believe I've gone this far with this thing. Starting off not knowing what I was talking about. But no, look, man, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for giving us the time. I'd love to get one of those shirts one day. I've still got to chase up about that. But yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys on the WoW series and having a beer after racing. And
we're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And the best thing about I love wingless racing, primarily because of the people. I think that wingless racing, as I said, chock full of people who are really hardened speedway people. They're really good at what they do. They bring out really, really good race cars. And I'm looking forward to seeing us all get out there and put on a show for whoever wants to turn up and have a look.
Hopefully we get a lot turn up for that WoW series. Oh, I don't know if you've heard the rumor. You've heard the rumor about the posse?
Nah.
Yeah, okay. So the rumor is there's a couple of guys who, because they didn't get the golden ticket, they didn't take that as a negative. They've taken it as a positive, and they're going to start a little posse, and they're going to come after the contracted drivers. And I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Like, this is what we need. Awesome. I mean, people don't like drama, but hey, drama is what creates discussion points, and before you know it, we might even get some more people through the gates trying to watch what's going to happen. But I think it's good.
Any state? What state? Different states?
Well, I've only heard from a couple of guys from New South Wales, and they're prepared to do the whole 5 rounds. So yeah, I'd hope I'm going to hear from more. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. No, it's going to be great, and it's going to be a busy time, but that's it. That's what this is about. It's about showing people how good you are, and putting your best foot forward and racing against the very best. And as I said, I just want to see guys get really, really good to a point where they can go and race internationally. And if the WoW series can help with that, then we're supporting it. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Gary. Look, man, I really appreciate your time. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone else for tuning in. Sorry about this. We had to do a bit of an edit there, and I don't know if you're going to see it or not, but I'll try and do my best to cut and snip. But that's episode 13, and you guys have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.